Cutter is no stranger to public service. He's been a state representative, served on the local board of finance, and now he is Bethel's first selectman after a special election held in February. Today in the Municipal Voice, we're going to talk to first selectman about his former role in the state legislature and adjusting to a new role right in the middle of budget season. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Houstonic Community College. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state and local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders.
Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Matt.
Good to have you. As we noted in the intro, you're just a little over a month into your new job as Bethel's first selectman. So how are things going?
It's going really well. It's been a really amazing opportunity. It's a little different for me than some because I won in the special election. So literally, you win the election on a Tuesday, and I was at my desk at 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So not much of a transition time.
Had to get up and running real fast. But luckily for you, you're not entirely unfamiliar with local government. You were serving on the Board of Finance when you were elected as Bethel's first selectman. And right now you're in the middle of municipal budget season. Did being on the Board of Finance make it easier as opposed to taking over with no idea, or how'd that work?
I think it made it a lot easier. In addition, I was a state legislator for 6 years. So I think the fact that I had a little bit of background working on state budgets on the Finance Revenue Bonding Committee years ago, and then a year on the Board of Finance, becoming more intimately familiar with the Bethel budget, it certainly was helpful. What I found very interesting about the process, though, for me, is that when I was on the Board of Finance, it was a little bit different than being the person whose budget was being approved. So I remember my predecessor, when he was going to bat for certain things in the budget, it was a different mentality. The day I took the job, now I'm actually fighting for a budget to get things done in the town and make sure we have the municipal employees taken care of. It was an interesting reversal. That was what struck me odd in the very beginning.
Different positions have different, parameters and priorities and what your goals are, definitely.
Right. In the Board of Finance, I think, you're looking at it from the perspective of just the taxpayer, right? And you're saying, okay, with the taxpayer, I want to get this budget as low as I possibly can.
Which is your charge in that position. That's what you're supposed to do.
Now that I'm actually the first selectman, I look at it from both sides because now I have a better lens into what we need done, in the town and from the municipal budgeting side. It's just a very interesting switch.
Yeah. So I said, it's a switch from the Board of Finance, and you mentioned before that, you've been in the legislature before. Talking about public service as a broader topic, what drew you to the position of a town CEO?
It's interesting. I think over the years, I saw what the town CEO did. So, I grew up in a small town in the West, and then was in the military for a long time. And I found my way to Bethel really in 2004. So as an adult coming into this town, I saw how much happened in a town and how important it was for the local government to serve the people in town. I had gone in, I served in the legislature because I found it incredibly interesting, right? I was wired for public service, but as I dealt with the CEOs from various towns, not only the towns I represented, I represented Danbury, Bethel, Newtown, Reading, but also across the state, I kind of developed a real interest in doing the job that someday I would want to do it. And it was very similar to some of the operational jobs I had in the military, so it looked at like not only as an interesting job, challenging job, but this job is where rubber meets the road, right? To help your community, you're involved in so many different things. Everything from, the police departments, fire departments, public safety. There's your effect on the schools and educating children. There's effect on the business community, right? Trying to make your community better for business and, bringing that tax revenue the right way. And then there's just the very fabric of the community itself. Like right now, some of our big challenges really involve the building, the development. So it's a very diverse job. And I got to say, I come in every day and there's something a little bit different going on that, I know it's part of the job, it's what I do every day. It can be a little bit different, which is really exciting. So that's kind of how I found my way here. I've always been wired for service. And I got to say, I think I'm 7 weeks in on Wednesday. Not that I've got something, maybe 8 weeks. I don't know.
Any regrets so far?
No, not one. not one.
That's great.
And, I could see this being something like my predecessor here did a great job, Matt Knickerbocker. He was here for 13 years. And I could see you getting to a point where some of the political stuff annoys you. Because one thing I love about the job is it's less political than Hartford or going up, the higher up you go, the more political it becomes.
Yeah.
Working as a CEO of a small town, you're really trying to take the politics out of as much as possible. And people want that, expect that, and it helps us do our job better. So for me, no regrets, nothing that I don't like about it so far. As long as the politics stays out of it, I'll be really happy.
That's really cool. All these different ways that people can serve. And for you and what you personally enjoy and where you find the rewards, it seems like going to the executive position, being where you can actually make the things happen rather than legislation where you're thinking about what should happen or the laws. I want to be hands-on and doing stuff. That's really great. So what were your priorities in taking office?
Right. So a couple of things that were really important to me starting out, and things that I had learned over the last year, and especially in the campaign. The development in town I mentioned. As you know, a lot of controversy across Connecticut with respect to how towns are developed and the 830G laws, the 830G statute. Most folks who probably looked at your podcast know exactly what those are, but it's a real problem because, a small community like ours, we have just under 20,000 people. We have a very quaint New England downtown.
Yeah.
What's happening is we are one of the densest towns in the state already, population wise. And with the ability for people to come in and just kind of ignore our zoning, it's created a lot of challenges. Now, the good side is Bethel has done very well with affordable housing.
Yeah.
Building not only affordable housing, but housing that's affordable, right? We're still somewhat of an affordable town, but the more the denser we get and the more buildings we put on top of each other, becoming problematic for folks in town. And they're really up in arms about it. So that making sure that we kind of wrestle this issue down in the sense that we know we have more control over our zoning. If that somehow, we still want to make the town affordable through like accessory apartments and all these other things that we can do. And I think one of the things we've lobbied for too is that we'd love our town, well, in the state of Connecticut, we'd love to find a way for towns like us to get more things included as affordable housing or deemed affordable. So those are things that are really important for our constituents, right? That downtown feel, the charm of the town. But then the other thing is, which is unique, maybe not unique for us, is communication. Post-pandemic, we were just talking about this kind of before we started, how we do a lot of things online now. There's still, I think, a disconnect. We have groups of people, kids in our community don't feel connected to the community. The seniors don't feel connected to the community. And the people in the middle don't know what's happening in town. And that's become a big issue for us.
Yeah.
So for me, what I've tried to do is I'm instituting a little weekly newsletter kind of thing. We don't have a paper that just is our town. We have a couple of little publications. Printed, a couple online. So there's not really a news outlet for people to know what's going on. So I'm trying to do things to encourage communication in town.
And like, how do residents, that weekly communication, how are you sending that out? Is that social media? Is that on the town's website? How are you doing that?
Well, we're doing a little bit of everything. I mean, we're going to redo our website. Our website it wasn't that long ago that it was done, but it's kind of clunky. There's not a lot of access to information about what's happening for public hearings, things like that. Big piece of what we have to do. We need to do more pushing out of information. So like many communities, we're a town meeting form of government. So a town meeting form of government, basically the town itself, every person is a shareholder, and they actually elect, or not only elect, they vote for all the referendums. So certain things, it's not just the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance, it actually goes to the town for a vote. And what we find is referendums, nobody shows up. We had a $12 million referendum a while back for a new well in town. I think we had 700 people out of 12,700 voters. So the reason it happens, I think, is we don't push out the information. I think in local government, we put it up on a website and we put it out somewhere. We don't push it out. So we're going to try actually use social media to boost things from the town. Now, it won't be political, but when there's a referendum coming, it's going to show up. Down the line, we may even do some targeted, OTT on stream, things like that. We're going to set aside some budget to do that to get participation in what we do. And then the other part is making sure we're covering everybody. So that, for instance, Senior Center has an incredible newsletter. Like the Bethel Senior Center, I mean, it's hands down amazing, all the programs they do. And I don't think a lot of people know, but we're going to try to touch the seniors a little more so they understand what's happening in town.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's really good stuff that you're working on there. Going back a little bit to the affordable housing, because it is a problem in Connecticut. There is, you know, overall in the state, a lack of affordable housing for people. And so it is something that, you know, towns are trying to address. And you mentioned a few strategies and options that you have for fulfilling the affordable housing stuff while maintaining local control. So can you expand a little bit on some of those ideas that you had that, you know, how do we achieve this while maintaining local control?
Right. Well, okay. So remember the beginning of 830G. I mean, first off, let me say there's two kinds of housing, right? There's affordable housing as deemed affordable by the state, where people qualify based on their income level, and you know that's affordable housing. And then there's housing that's affordable. And I say
the legally defined by the state,
and then there's
and there's what we all understand.
Okay, because 830G, you know, that law, the statute 8-30G, you know, came being early 90s, and the idea is that you would really give developers a little more power in community to bring in affordable housing in case the zoning folks there were blocking everything. I mean, that's what it is. It's strictly like a battle. So they wanted to like negate local zoning so they can bring in more affordable housing. Now, the unintended consequences is when you have a small town like ours where, you know, we kind of rely on this downtown charm as really an asset for our businesses and driving people in, things like that. That's where the problem has become, right? Because now anybody can just come in and say, oh, I'm going to put an 830G property in there. And now it negates local zoning all the way. Even when our local zoning folks want to work together, we want, you know, good affordable housing in the town. So the big problem is that with the housing that's deemed affordable, right, it has to be deeded affordable for 40 years. And it usually has to be something that's built new. And when I say new, after 1895. So we have a couple of neighborhoods in this town, for instance, that have these really charming homes. And those charming little homes would probably, when you look at the monthly cost for a mortgage or your renting, would fall into the affordable category. Maybe less, you know, when you actually look at the numbers. The problem is we can't use it. We can't count that towards our affordability stock. And every town has to have 10%. That's deemed affordable. Now, Bethel's done all right. We were 6.8, like, you know, on the last round. We were 6.8%. So we're getting close to that 10% mark. But still, like, we have all these homes. That would be great. And by the way, we could do programs that encourage homeownership, which to me would be far better for our communities across the state of Connecticut.
But currently, those little houses don't meet the standard in the law.
They don't meet the standard. They're great little houses. It's a perfect place to, you know, get people involved in the community and move in, but they don't even count. So again, it goes back to finding ways to build large apartments, you know, the bigger monstrosities of town, right? To bring the numbers of people. We're already one of the more densely populated places, right? And where it also affects us dramatically is the how fast we've been growing. We've been growing very quickly. In fact, I think since September, we've got maybe another 70 or 80 kids in the schools. And that also is kind of a problem because, you know, we're getting more kids very quickly in between budget. Like, so we're trying to figure out how to do that, not to mention other services. It becomes really complicated. The other thing that Bethel is known for, you may not know, is we have an incredible special education program through our schools. So Bethel is also a little bit of a target in that, you know, people want to bring their kids here, which
because
is
of the good school. Yeah,
we have a great program. In fact, we have a transition program for kids. You know, when they finish high school, we keep them up until 22 years old to do life skills and things like that. And they actually, you know, we have a teen center where they spend the day right downtown. They can do life skills. I mean, it's just an amazing town. So by virtue of that, every time they build a huge apartment building, boom, everybody's here like right away. So we just want to like be able to say, all right, we want some smaller places for families. Like if you can have accessory housing and things like that, that would count for 830G moratorium or 830G number. Some of these small houses in town, which are beautiful, that bring families in, that would be a much better thing to manage our growth.
So we don't want affordable housing, but maybe expand the definition of what can be fulfill that need by being affordable, but not necessarily all these other things that are written in there.
But also, I mean, from the state's, I understand the state's perspective.
They want to make sure it's a good quality, it's not
Yes,
affordable because it's run down. Like, yeah, it has to be maintained and that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely.
exactly. It needs to count in their definition, in the sense that, yeah, they have a quality control aspect. They want to make sure that, you
It needs to be
know,
inspected. The wiring needs to be up to,
yeah,
yeah.
you don't want people to be at the mercy of landlords so quickly. Like, oh, I'm not going to be affordable, or this, or like, you do want something that continues that long term, wherever that property is. I don't think it has to be 40 years, but
Yeah.
that is what the state is asking for is not awful. It's just the way it's been done has really affected small communities.
Really, it needs to be fine tuned. It sounds like in a lot of ways. Yeah. You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. And you also mentioned the influx of people. Has that been kind of an ongoing thing in Bethel, or did that accelerate with the pandemic, where we saw a lot of people from like New York and the cities kind of moving across the border because they can now telecommute more?
Yes and yes.
A little bit of both.
Yes and yes. Yeah. Bethel's been, I think, growing steadily for some period of time. You know, it's a really great little town. Again, New England charm, really good community. You know, it's interesting because I always call us a little bit landlocked, meaning it's kind of hard to get. There's no direct road into Bethel. Like you have to come down Main Street in Danbury, or you got to come back roads from 84, or you come up Route 58 through Fairfield County. It's not like Bethel has a major thoroughfare going right through it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So people have come here for years for that, and we've grown steadily. But to your point, I think during the pandemic, we saw so many people, you know, do the exodus from New York, come over and buy Connecticut properties, set up shop here, work from home. That has definitely been an effect in Bethel. I mean, a ton of New Yorkers have come in, and you know, everybody's kind of redesigned their lives now on how they work and commute.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting to see, especially on the western half of the state, where it's so close that it makes it an easy option for a lot of the New Yorkers.
Well, for even my wife, it was a little bit different for her because my wife worked in Manhattan and was in Manhattan every day. So now she does almost all her work from home and goes into the city 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah.
So I got to assume there are a lot of other companies who are still trying to figure out, you know, what they're going to do. So it's been an interesting change, I think.
And so the people like who are already here and commuting in, now they're here and maybe they're buying lunch in Bethel instead of in Manhattan or something like that.
Here's hoping, because I mean, the restaurants still, I think they hurt at lunchtime. You know, again, the problem sometimes with the way we develop, there's not an eye towards, you know, bringing in maybe corporate business, you know, little office, things like that. In fact, we have what dovetails into this. We have a TOD, a transit-oriented district.
Okay.
Right. So TOD has been a hot thing for many years, where you know, you're going to build residential and business together, and you know, folks are expecting to use the train, go to Manhattan, all that.
Metro North Station, right in the heart of Bethel, right?
Right, heart of Bethel. We literally have like an industrial zone right around our train station. That's all set to be redeveloped, and we have homes near the train station.
And right on in Manhattan.
Yeah, to go to, but now commuting patterns have changed dramatically. I don't know how people go to Manhattan. A lot of our TOD was based on the idea that they were going to make the train line better. And for many, many years, they were talking about more service, electrifying the service on the Danbury rail line, all these great things. They've never happened. So what we find ourselves in is we've done all this work to make a TOD, but we're missing the D. I'm sorry, no,
T.
Yeah, we're missing the T backwards. Sorry. It's Monday. And I know we're going to do this on Wednesday, but it's a Monday. So anyway, it's one of these things now that we've got this TOD development around the train station, but the commuting patterns have changed, I think, dramatically. We don't know what we're going to do. And I don't know if they'll ever really fix up the Danbury train line.
Yeah.
So that's another big switchover for a town like Bethel, because we're building based on this idea and this concept that that's the way it would be. So we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe we get more offices in town. Maybe we get more people who will come here for lunch. You know, I'd like to see our restaurants do a little bit better in the day.
That'd be very cool. So we've talked about, you know, keeping Bethel affordable as being kind of a priority. And it requires a multifaceted approach. So let's talk about a few of them. What does responsible budgeting mean to you and to the citizens of Bethel?
Well, you know, for the citizens of Bethel, the lower the better, right? I think. Now it's interesting. When you talk to somebody in a municipality, you know, a local town, most of them will say, listen, we're fine with paying taxes. We're fine with making our like having good schools. Some people will say you'll get the most conservative Republican, whatever, really conservative fiscal person, right? And when it comes to schools, they're like, I'll pay anything for the schools. But they just want to know that their money is going to something important. I think at the municipal level, they want to make sure the community's not taking more than it needs. That we're keeping, their fiscal world in our minds when we're doing things and trying to make it as small as possible. So from the municipal side, we have to be really, I would say, reasonable in what I think we can do and do. Sometimes just do more with less. This year is a great example. I just came in and, some of my departments wanted a couple extra people. And being the new guy on the job, I knew I needed to see, really what I could do.
You'll make promises before you know if you can do it.
It's hard to come in. I literally arrived the day the budget started. So, and we had people wanting more bodies to do things. So it was a really interesting position because you want to trust your folks. They know, they know what they need. So I tried really hard to, in a couple of instances, instead of asking for somebody right away, I said, well, can we have them later in the year? Let's cut that position in half, right? I'll hire them now. Give me 6 months or so to figure out what we really need, and then we can put it, in the January budget kind of thing.
Yeah.
So those are just ideas, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to make sure that we're using the money responsibly. We're not just asking for stuff we don't need. And believe me, from our perspective, or from a town administrator, town manager perspective, the CEO, I want to do as much as I can, little as possible. Every dollar that we get has to be spent wisely. Yeah. So I think that's what's really important to people, that they know that we have that in the back of our mind, And then there are priorities, like you said, the schools, the roads. Roads are a huge priority. In fact, this year, I think it's one of the first years we've had a fully funded road budget. My predecessor was trying to get to $1 million. That's really what would keep our roads healthy for a period of time. We need a little more to catch up, but I got that much for the town, so we're going to be doing a lot.
Did you end up with anything left over because of the lack of snow or anything?
Yeah, look at you. You must be talking to other towns.
Must be.
We did. Now, I don't know how much it'll be in the end, because we had a couple.
And it's not a huge amount, but we know we heard a lot of snow budgets largely went untouched, and so people are trying to take that little bit they got left over and turn to something else useful.
Yeah, what we did is when the town came with us, or I should say the highway department came for the budget. Originally, they wanted about 1.1 million. It was just about $128,000 more than $1 million. That's about 2 roads. It's about $50,000-$60,000 per road is really how you think of it in town. So they cut that part out, hoping that we would have some salt and savings budget around 130 grand.
Okay.
And I think we're going to be on track for part of that. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, but it's looking good, which means that's 2 more roads, and that actually can get us in a place where we're a little bit caught up.
Yeah, that's very cool. Another aspect of the economy in town, of course, is businesses. What sort of businesses would you like to see come to Bethel?
I don't, I'm not so much in like picking winners and losers of businesses per se, but I really would like to see us, I would say, develop our industrial zone to a little more like business. So we have an industrial park in town, which is unique. And we have about 4 lots available there. Big lots for more, I think, significant manufacturing.
Yeah, so stuff that's already set aside for that purpose, that's just waiting for the right company. Yeah,
exactly. So, but downtown we have this industrial zone. It's zoned industrial, and so one of the things I've been trying to talk about publicly is when we consider how we develop that, let's have an eye on maybe creating the reverse commute to Bethel. Remember, right? I don't think people living here and the way that commuting patterns have changed. Maybe if we have small light manufacturing to the scale of our town, or tech, like a tech park, maybe we can attract people to come here by train. Think about it. We get Stamford, Norwalk, along the coast, up from the Milford out. Like we could actually create a place where there's a little bit of a reverse commute. So that also, being selfish, it brings more tax per acre. If you have businesses like that who thrive and do well, then they come here to do lunch. They have things in town. You get people who see Bethel and want to move here, right? But you also have this vibrant economy going on right in the middle of your town. So that would be something that I would hope to see. And then on the northern part of our town, along Route 6, we have an area called Stony Hill.
Mhm.
And up there that we have a couple of, well, we have Target, so our only like box store in Bethel.
Yeah.
But we have room to put in some more offices and things like that. So I love to see, doctors, corporate, those folks. It's great access to the highway.
Mhm.
And I think, that area is really, really ripe for that kind of development.
Yeah. Good areas that are already set up for that kind of responsible development. It's good stuff to have. So in addition to being in the middle of town budgets and stuff, we're also in the middle of state budgeting process now. And one of CCM's kind of main priorities is local education. We see it as kind of the backbone of society, getting a good public education. Let's talk briefly about education, and then we can kind of get more specifically into special education, which you worked on a lot as a state rep. How important is good local education to you?
Well, not an easy question because there's a lot of pieces and parts to that question. And as you can tell, Matt, I'm a talker. So it's important for a couple of reasons. Obviously, there's the moral responsibility of a town. I think as a community, I think we owe it to our kids to give them a good education and a good foundation to launch them off into the world. And that comes with many, many benefits, right? Big benefit is for the local community, people who are not necessarily paying into education per se or have kids in school. Their property values are going to go up. Bethel becomes a place that's in high demand right now. It still is. And you can see that in our local assessments. We had an assessment year. A lot of the properties went up. And so I think there's a real benefit there when you have good local education.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it too is I used to joke as a state rep, like politically, that I want Connecticut to be a place where my kids could get a good education, get a good job, and not live with me. Right? But they could be here, not live with me. So that's another part of it too, because I think if you create a community that has that education and it has a strong connection as a community, a foundation, then you get people who want to come back and participate.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not from Bethel, Connecticut. I chose here, but you also get people who were born and raised here or want to bring back here, bring families, and that's very strong for the community.
Yeah.
Because that helps everybody, helps businesses, helps the community. So those are just some of the best benefits of a good local education.
One thing that CCM is always big on, and we're calling for increased funding of programs and accelerating the phase-in of education cost sharing, ECS.
Yes.
Would Bethel benefit from this phase-in, and what could teachers in your town do with extra money for special programs?
Well, I don't know if it's so much we're getting extra money. It's money we need. That's
money
the hard.
Money we were largely promised too. Is the other thing.
Yeah, it is. But now right now we're in a good spot in the sense that we have great folks in our school system who I think manage budgets well. We haven't had significant cuts in programs, things like that. Like we're doing well. I mean, we pay obviously our community significant education budget, but the ECS is so important and we're going to get a little more this year.
That's good
because we're one of the growing towns. So we are growing. We are going to get a little bit more. But it's not enough. And it's hard to say would they do more with extra because I think where we would benefit is if we could reduce our class sizes a little bit. That would be something that would be tremendous. Right now in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, the other money or the extra money or whatever we get has seemed to have gone to like remediate for the pandemic. So hiring math tutors. Extra paraprofessionals, for kids who are having a struggle. That has been what the extra money would have been, right? Yeah. We brought on when we had when our school had some ARPA funds, they brought on some of those folks, and then through budgeting this year, we were able to keep them. So if you want to think about what they're doing extra right now, it's mitigating for what happened in the pandemic still.
So you're already doing extra,
Right. I would love to see. I would love to see the schools free to do more advanced classes or more like that. They also do some great things with pathway programs. Like they're working on a manufacturer's pathway program for the kids.
Oh, that's very cool.
One for EMTs, where you go to EMT while you're in school, and then go out and maybe participate in emergency medicine. And I know they're working on one for certified nursing assistants. Pairing up with RVNA Health in Ridgefield. So those kinds of programs too can be very helpful because if we have an 80% graduation rate and kids are going to college and we're a good school, well, the other 20% we owe something to as well.
Yeah.
Those could be other ways that they might deem.
Yeah, and those are jobs and skills that you need in your community. Definitely.
Yeah.
EMTs, like those are all important people that you need around. In your time as a state representative, you served on the governor's Special Education Advisory Council. Tell us about that experience, and can you explain to kind of the average home viewer common issues that arise with special education funding?
Sure, sure. Well, from the experience perspective, it was really interesting because it just sounded something I wanted to get involved, like I want to get involved in.
Mhm.
And I think what was fun about it for me was I really had a direct connection with parents
Mhm.
who had kids in special education programs. But at the level where they were working with the governor and the state
Mhm.
to try to make those programs better, to oversee them, to do exactly what you just said, maybe
Mhm.
give the folks in the legislature an idea of what it was all about.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard to connect with what the special education programs always are. Like we hear
Mhm.
about it, but we're not boots on the ground to see what happens.
Mhm.
And one of the best examples I can give you is I think I mentioned very earlier. We have this task program. It's a transition program for kids in the school who are special needs. And
Mhm.
before they go out, we keep them till they're 22.
Mhm.
And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money to keep those kids engaged
Mhm.
and help give them the life skills that they need, right?
Yeah.
So going through school, because while all these kids have been, mainstreamed,
Mhm.
which is they need those other things. They need the paraprofessionals. They need extra help through the
Yeah.
program. And what happens is, like in our transition program, we've got this group of kids who are out there doing life skills. Some of them are getting jobs in town. We one of my favorite things, being the first selectman, is
Mhm.
every Thursday at 10 o'clock, the kids come around with a coffee cart,
Nice.
and it's their opportunity to I almost sell something. They take the money.
Mhm.
They learn a life skill, right? It's like
Yeah.
a little business. Go around and they do this, and they're just small pieces of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Again, the foundation of this is to keep those kids engaged and
Mhm.
help. And I'll share real quickly a success story.
Mhm.
One of the kids who just graduated from the program has come through Bethel schools, and I guess it was a high functioning autism, may have been what he had, but
Yeah.
when he got into the program, nobody could touch him. You couldn't, there was a problem. Noise was a problem.
Mhm.
And upon graduation, I'm standing there talking to his grandmother who had flown up from Carolinas. And I was watching Mr. Troetti, our high school principal,
Mhm.
with his hand on his shoulder and talking about how far he's come and how good he is. And I watched him give him a hug. Now
Mhm.
that would not have been possible without the program that these
Mhm.
kids go through, along with being educated, right? So I think we have to understand that it's, from a community's perspective, somebody's got to take care of these kids. If we were going to outplace them,
Mhm.
it would be, I don't know, $250,000 plus a year,
Yeah.
not to mention transportation. It's millions and millions of dollars.
Mhm.
And now we can keep them in our community, make sure they get the education they need, and also make sure that they're tied into the community in a way that makes it very viable for all of us to have them here.
Mhm.
Then, to your point, is the funding.
Yeah.
The funding is the issue. I would want people to understand when they look at these school budgets, we do not get the special education funding that we're promised from the state. And every community wrestles with this no matter how good the
Mhm.
program is. The state always shortchanges us on
Yeah.
what we're supposed to
And
get.
for smaller towns such as Bethel, or even smaller towns in Connecticut, a single special education student can greatly affect the education budget for the town because it's a large expense. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. If it wasn't for this transition program, I think right now we have 11 kids.
Mhm.
Imagine having all or even just half of those outplaced. And the amount of money we would have to spend for the transportation
Mhm.
and the education for the kids is enormous, enormous. So it's expensive when we keep them here too. But that's why the education funding coming to us is so important, because we get shortchanged dramatically. Then imagine if we had to turn around and try to outsource. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is a big part of our budget when we're talking to people in the community. It's a big part of our budget.
Yeah. Do you see any possible solutions from the state to help that situation out?
It's politics. I don't,
Mhm.
it's easy for me to say, well, I've been there. I mean,
Yeah.
I do know where I would spend money differently.
Mhm.
I think we get a lot of pet projects up there in Hartford that people
Mhm.
want. Everybody's project or what they fund is probably good. But at some point, I think we have to sit down and look at some of these and say, yeah, we're going to prioritize a little better instead of just putting it all in the taxpayer of the smaller community.
Yeah.
You know, we should get some help from the state, especially a town like Bethel where we've got an excellent program. People are coming here for the program. We become a little more disadvantaged, I think. So if we just got that, if somehow the money followed the kid across the state, you know, that would be in itself would be tremendous opportunity for all the kids.
Yeah, because then someone coming into town would be not a financial burden and great.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, and it would be the same anyway, right? I mean, and we'd probably have better programs that every town could benefit from what we benefit from.
Yeah, because no town, we don't want to help out special education students and give them the proper education. These are big financial obligations to a small town, and you know.
And by and large, I feel like the people in town understand it. You know, there's always a group who's like, you know, what the hell are we spending it on? And because they're not intimately familiar or in front of it every day. You know, when I think when they meet some of those kids or they understand what's going on or what we're trying to do, they realize we're trying to save as much money as possible. But at the Bethel level, you know, we're relying on what's happening over at the state. And if they're not giving us the funding, we're just doing the best we can.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. From your experience as a business owner, state rep, local official, how important is it to have stability in budgeting?
Very. You know, it's interesting. So mine being a small business, it was easy. You know, I was basically recruiting and doing sales management training and some things like that. And I've pretty much shut the doors on that now that I'm doing this, at least for now.
Okay.
But to your point, the stability is important because, you know, there's never a good time to raise your budget, right? In a municipality, you have to ask for exactly what you need at the moment, right? Because if we're not doing what we can to predict, we want to look long term at what we're doing, but we got to ask for just what we need. But if we see things long term, we want to keep it stable in the sense that you don't want next year to all of a sudden, you know, come off a fiscal cliff, whether it's spending or your debt service or, you know, 100 different things that can happen to you. You want to keep that as stable as you can for the community. I'll be honest, I was scared to death walking into this budget this year because I saw the schools were coming in at 6.37%. I saw what the town was looking for in the beginning. And I'm like, oh my God, on top of an assessment, we just had an assessment, which means, you know, probably, I don't know, maybe 30% of our community, maybe 40% have a baked tax increase already. Because of the leveling of the. So I was really, really worried coming in this year because it would not have looked like a stable budget. Now, as it is, the schools are amazing and our superintendent found some incredible healthcare savings. I worked with the Board of Finance to cut some things out, like I mentioned, some of the bodies we needed. We're going to be down at a 3.89 when it goes to vote, which is good. But again, we're looking at our budget. We're looking at long term to make sure we don't get these fiscal cliffs or, you know, highs and lows over time. But still manage to ask for what we need at the moment. That our residents know we're not padding the budget. We're not, you know, saving. We're not doing something to like build up for the rainy day. I mean, I think it's what's happened in the state. You know, we've had these surpluses. You know, as the governor said, you know, he used it to buy down some pensions and things. Those are all good things. But we also need to make sure we're not overtaxing people. Right. At any given time. So it's a whole other ballgame.
Always a balancing act.
Yeah.
So we are in the middle of the legislative session up in Hartford, and our advocacy team is up there hard at work as usual. If you could tell the state legislature just one other priority to work on it in the coming year, what would it be and why?
Well, we've already talked about two of them.
We have.
For me, it's the affordable housing issue. You know, I know there's a couple of bills up there where they're looking at finding ways. I tried to put this back in 2015. And I want to find some other options that we can deem towards our affordable housing numbers. Like we need to grow those numbers. We all need to, you know, create affordable housing. All good. But I want to see that bill go through where, you know, accessory housing and some things like that can count towards that number. Possibly and rolled into that is the TOD. You know, they're doing TOD legislation right now. I'm particularly scared about it because what they're doing is they're hijacking the TOD concept
Mm-hmm.
for affordable housing, as of
Mm-hmm.
right, where they can just come in and do whatever they want without even talking to zoning almost.
Yeah.
Insane to me. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody who pushes that thing should be, voted out of office in a heartbeat. It's
Mm-hmm.
awful for a lot of communities. I'd much rather see us work together and create something that works for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So those, and then the other one, special education. If we can find a way to get more funding that follows the kids,
Mm-hmm.
wherever they in the state, I think that would be a moral obligation of the legislature. They should do that. It would help out towns across the state. So those are the things
those would be the big ones in your mind for this year. I also want to talk a little bit about public service. You were in the military, you've been in the state legislature, now you're first elected. Clearly you have a calling to public service. Why is it important to you, and why is it important to everybody? Why should public service be important to everybody?
Yeah, it's funny. Public service is important in the sense that it's hard to say it's important to everybody. I think it should be important for people to recognize that those in public service are doing it for the right reasons and they're doing it for them. Not every person is wired for public service. They're just not wired that way. I don't understand. My wife's one of the best people on the planet.
Yeah.
I don't, she loves participating in certain things in charities. She's not wired for public service. I am. I've never understood that about myself, why it's important, because it's important to me because I live here. And I know that if I push forward and I do these things, it matters to me and how I feel about my community. And it's the people like me who make these communities work. It's the people who stand. You remember, was it Roosevelt, the man in the arena, right? There are plenty of people who can sit back and criticize.
Yeah.
And they can say, how the strong man stumbles, and they can sit there and laugh at you on social media. But there's a certain group of people who stand up every day who want to come do this, and they know they're going to get their tail kicked for whatever they said that day, but they're just really driven to dare greatly, and they're really driven to do this based on wanting to help their community. So when public service is important, I would say, it's all of us should participate in our community. We're in New England. We have the most participatory governments around, supposedly. Yeah. But people do become a little apathetic. They get involved in their own world, and I think they miss the benefit of participating. The chance that you come and you get involved in Earth Day coming up and do something, you feel good about that. It's good for the community. It brings people together, and I think you feel good walking away.
Yeah.
Not everybody's wired for it. So for those folks, I hope they would support public service. And
for the people like you who are wired like that, what advice would you give to them? Concerning pursuing, like how do you get into it? What should they do?
I'll jump in. The water's warm. No, it's well, first off, the most important thing is talk to your local first selectman. I mean, if you're in Bethel, I've talked to people. If there's something you want to get involved in, make sure you let people know you want to be involved. I would say from a community's perspective, we should look, like from my perspective, I want to look for small things for people to do. Like not every person's going to run for the board of education, or not every person's going to take on the president of an organization. But we have a commission called Sustainable Bethel. Sustainable Bethel is tied into Sustainable Connecticut. And I have opportunities there for people to come in and do little jobs.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to want to be the first selectman to go into public service. You can say, I want to help with sustainability in my town.
Exactly.
Board or commission that you might want to.
Right. Yeah. And it's also really incumbent upon the first selectmen or mayors or leaders or economic development communities to find out things for people to do, because there are a lot of people who want to help.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, because the way government is structured, it's hard to find places to plug them in. If that makes sense. And the other part of this, look for organizations that people like. I would say there are a ton of organizations where. Here we have Scotty Fund is really big, helping families who have medical needs. We've got 2 food pantries, one of which is Brotherhood National. They get people involved. We have a YMCA. We have all these different groups. Yeah. Right. There's the library, for crying out loud. The library in our town does a ton of community programs that people may not even know about. So I guess find those organizations in your town and kind of get plugged into doing something there. Yeah. And then I think that service is equally as important as running for the Board of Ed or being on the Board of Finance, something that might appear to take more time commitment. Yeah. And I will also say, if there's something you love doing, have a passion for, if you're a financial person and you really love it, you love numbers, then yeah, definitely think about running for your board of finance.
Yeah.
No.
Like there's things out there for everyone's sort of skills that they can use those skills to benefit their community.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. The town of Bethel is we're a small town. We have just under 20,000 people. We're a $90 million enterprise, just the town.
Yeah.
So now you have all these different organizations that are out there who have helped to support us. There's plenty of opportunities for folks to get a little piece of what feels good about supporting your community. Because it does feel good. Like when you get to do something, you're a part of something. I would say even the people who aren't wired for public service, I think it feels good. I like it.
Yeah, it may be tough sometimes, but ultimately it's rewarding.
Oh, very much so. What's happened is, as I've gotten older, I thought a little more about my rewards. So what I'll tell people about finding jobs or what you want to do in life, think of three things. Number one, find out what you're very best at, and you might have a little bit of a passion for, so it's in you. Figure out where you can do that in a sense that you're best at it and you're leveraging it for something. Like that's your passion.
Yeah.
And then you figure out the reward. So the reward is not always money. It's really not. This job does not pay. I make far more than this on the outside. But what rewards me about this is this certain sense of accomplishment that I get. Because going out and doing something in the community and having a chance to impact somebody, and you've done something to make their life better. Or for me, a lot of times people won't make decisions and government becomes bureaucracy. I like to get things done. I like to just jump in and feel like I made something happen. Those are rewards for me inside. So whatever that reward is for you, whether it's money, whether it's recognition, like they feel bad about being recognized. You wouldn't be recognized. They'll get recognized. So I say think about those three things when you go look for something to do, even in community service. It'll never steer you wrong.
Finally, in closing, as a newly elected official, you win for this position, so you must have some kind of optimism about the future of Bethel. Otherwise, you wouldn't have run for it. Are you, in fact, optimistic about the future of Bethel and the state of Connecticut?
I am actually. Listen, we spent a lot of time, complaining about it, and there's a lot of things I want to change. Obviously, I think Connecticut itself is way too expensive, right? It's just crazy, but I love the state. I chose to be here. It's just one of the most beautiful places in the country. I love the seasons. It reminds me a lot of Michigan, kind of where I spent my summers in some respects. So I love the quaintness of the towns. We really have a remarkable place in all facets, except the cost of living, and that stuff drives me absolutely crazy. But people say we pay for it, so I'd love to see that change. I'm optimistic over time it will. I'm optimistic. Now, as for Bethel, Bethel has a strong history. I mean, it's a really unique little town. I mean, think about it. We're on the edge of Danbury, very blue collar, and on the edge of Reading, Connecticut, very like bedroom community affluent New York. Right? Bethel has a really interesting vibe, and it's very special. And I think if we can keep that and keep this place as somewhere that's vibrant, that has we have great restaurants, we have great community events. If we can hold on to that, I have a lot of optimism for the town of Bethel, into the next 100 years. Hopefully I'll have my little teeny piece of part of it and helping it get better. And that's all you want. But I am optimistic about the town.
Great. Well, Dan Carter, congratulations on being the first selectman of Bethel. It seems like you're enthusiastic about the job, and I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the job. I love the community. But I think anybody who runs for this does. Just hopefully I can do a really good job for the folks who put me here. And I want to say thank you again, for you and CCM allowing us to have this municipal voice. We may not get heard out here sometimes, but it's important we all stick together.
We'd like to thank our guest, First Selectman Dan Carter. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilton is our producer, Harry Draws is on the board, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for a CCM chat series on our YouTube page.